take that as a... I don't know what.
I don't either. I don't know why I said it. Christine Jardine is with us. Again, Lib Dem Treasury spokeswoman. We love having Christine on the programme.
Hello.
Stefanie Bolzen, you've been here before as well. It's kind of like a reunion tonight, isn't it? Stefanie is UK and Ireland correspondent for Die Welt. And Shola Mos-Shogbamimu, I got it right, didn't I? How do you like to describe yourself, Shola? I always talk about you as a social commentator.
Well, I suppose I am, but I'm also a lawyer, a political and women's rights activist, and the author of This Is Why I Resist.
Excellent. Now, if you'd like to put a question to any of our panel, the number to call is 0345 6060 973. You can watch us on Global Player, on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, or the LBC YouTube and Facebook channels.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Well, let's get on with the programme and go to our first caller. It is Chris in Croydon. Hello, Chris.
Oh, good evening, Iain, and good evening, panel. Yes, my question is this. France has refused the Home Secretary's offer of security personnel to help patrol their coast. What is France's motives?
Christine, let's come to you first on this.
Well, it's difficult to think about how we would react if another country said, tell you what, we will send you our guards to look after your borders because we don't like what you're doing. It's a completely offensive, actually, suggestion if you're French. It's actually completely offensive, I think, to most of us as well. Because the solution to that problem, and I say us, I mean most British people, the solution to the problem is not to send British guards to France or German guards or Italian guards or American guards or anybody else. The solution is safe passage, safe corridors for migrants, safe corridors for asylum seekers, and not to do what this government has done by just making it more difficult and pushing people into the hands of, people traffickers. And also the other thing they've done, which I find unforgivable, is that they have cut foreign aid at a time when the world needs the UK's soft power and American soft power to help sustain democratic institutions, to help sustain democratic countries, and to stave off the sort of civil unrest and crises we're seeing in countries all over the world. People don't, break up their homes, leave all their possessions, put their families' lives at risk easily. They have to be absolutely desperate. And the sooner that we recognise that this government recognises that and stops playing some sort of ludicrous game of who can do it better with France or any other country for that matter, the better it will be for everybody.
I mean, looking at it another way, you could say that the British government is just trying to help out the French do what they're supposed to do anyway and stop people going into the Channel.
Absolutely. No, I don't, if you put even if you put the very best possible spin on it, that is not what the British government is doing. The British government is, trying to be heavy-handed. It's just offensive, Iain. I mean, like I said, put ourselves in the reverse position of France.
Okay.
Said,
all right. No, you've made that point.
You're not doing a very good job. We'll do it for you.
Andrea Leadsom.
Well, thank you. I actually think that what the government's trying to do is to stop the absolutely evil trade in human beings.
Christine says they're almost encouraging it.
Well, no, because what Christine's talking about is not the legal safe routes for seeking asylum or indeed of economic migrants. What we're talking about with these small boats is people who are running absolute existential risks of drowning and dying. Many, many children who've already died. And what the government is quite rightly doing is trying to stop them making that perilous journey. So actually the new bill that's coming forward is going to create a differential between those who come here legally and those who come here illegally in an attempt to try and stop that trafficking trade. That has got to be a priority.
But do you understand what Christine was saying about it appearing offensive to the French? Because if they offered to do that to us, I'm not sure you would think that was a great idea.
But to offer is not offensive. I mean, they've said no. And that's fine. I think the point being that what the government is finding is the number of people, something I don't quote me on this, but I think it was 24,000 people this year. That is a huge number of people. Now, if people are seeking asylum, then the rules on asylum are that you seek asylum in the first safe place you come to. And so clearly, France is a very safe place, and there are issues there, therefore.
But
and what the government's trying to do is
France isn't necessarily sorry, Christine. The France isn't necessarily the first country that they've come to. It's often Greece and Italy. But you would accept that Greece and Italy on their own cannot handle the numbers that they've had over the last few years.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Therefore, it is up to countries like Britain to take our fair share.
Legal migrants who've gone through a legal route. And let's be clear about this. The problem with economic migrants who come here illegally is the vast majority of them tend to be very able-bodied young men. What that means is that the women, the older people and the children are left behind with nothing. And that is partly the problem. The other massive problem is that evil trade in human beings.
We have a lot of jobs in this country that we need able-bodied young men to do,
we have legal routes for people to come to this country. We have many people who've come here. I mean, just look at we've had something like over 4 million EU citizens get their settled status in the UK so they can work here. We have so many people coming from South Asia, from across Africa, from right all around the world, and we welcome them with open arms. This is an incredibly welcoming country, but the fact of the matter is we do not want this illegal...
Christine, I know you're gagging to get in, but I do have two other panellists here that I need to bring in. Like, Shola is sort of itching to get in, aren't you?
I can't, please. Oh, Jesus. Okay. I totally agree with what Christina said. Her summary of the situation is absolutely bang on. It is totally insulting of the British government to go to France and say, well, you're not doing a good job, so I'm going to do it for you, when they can't even take care of their own borders. I thought the reason for Brexit was to control our borders. The problem here, and this is responding...
It is, but controlling other people's as well, obviously.
And this is responding to Andrew's point. What our government consistently does is to demonize and dehumanize refugees, and that is a problem. And when you say they're legal routes, you're making
is that really fair? Priti Patel's parents were refugees to this country themselves.
Thank you for mentioning Priti Patel's parents, because under Priti Patel's new policies, even her own parents will be able to come into the country. So please, let's not go there. The point here is that to Andrew's
I think you should defend that. I think you should prove that Priti Patel's parents couldn't come here. I think that is nonsense. I spend so much of my time facilitating family reunification in the UK. Look at what happened over the summer with Afghanistan refugees. So many members of Parliament
your response is totally gaslighting. You're making it look like this government is just... No. Let me finish. I listened to everything you had to say before it was my turn to speak, so you will listen to me. I'm trying to explain to you that you gaslighting the listeners by suggesting that this government is trying to deal with the problem of traffickers by actually demonizing the people who are being oppressed by traffickers.
So, Shola, I won't have you accuse me of lying, which is what you are accusing me of.
I'm telling you are lying. It's a lie.
No, I am
it is
not
a lie.
Lying.
That's not what the government is doing.
No, what this government is trying to do is to prevent illegal movement to this country.
The government is not doing that. The government is dehumanizing refugees, demonizing the language they use, the way that, how many, compared to other countries, how many migrants or refugees has the UK taken in? Each time we talk about migrant crossing, it's always to paint them looking like people who actually you should have gone to a different country before you came to us. That's not the point.
No,
the point is that is not the point. Yes, they are taking their lives in their hands. They're coming to us for a reason. And when they come to us, on their way to come to us, we should not be politicizing the difficult choices that they've had to make. But we're doing that, and we have politicians like you that want to gloss over it, making it look like, well, actually, the problems are those traffickers. If the traffickers are the problem, why are you punishing the people who are being oppressed by the traffickers? Andrea?
I'm not punishing anyone.
Yes, you are.
No,
the policies in place are doing that.
What I am explaining is that legal routes to migration are an absolute priority, that very often the illegal routes favour the traffickers and lead to people dying. And also, it tends to be those who can get here, leaving behind the elderly, the women and the children, and the sick and the infirm, who therefore are not able to get
so
here.
those legal routes are not available to everybody. Routes are available to everyone. The fact that some have to use... Hold on one second. The fact that some people have to go take extreme ways to get here should look at the circumstances of their lives and not decide that because they decide to take their lives into their own hands, it means that it's not legal. That's wrong.
I think we need Stefanie's characteristic calmness in the debate. Stefanie.
First of all, I think it's not an insult for the British government to ask the French if they could cooperate. You have these kind of cooperations all over Europe. You have German-French police patrols. You have actually this juxtaposition of the French doing the checks for the Brits on the French side, when it comes to the Eurotunnel. But what this all shows and what is happening to the government is that they, as you said, they try to take control. By having Brexit, they lost control. They completely lost control. And I find it, I must say, what is really not true, Andrea, is when you say these people, they could go to another country. They don't want to go to another country. They want to come to the UK.
I mean, she's right. They could go to another country. They may not want to go to another country.
They don't want to. They come there, they sit there for years in horrible circumstances, and they want to go to the UK because their families are there, because they speak the language, and so on.
Exactly.
And now the government is constantly not saying the truth to the British public by saying, we're going to do a treaty or an agreement with the French. This won't happen because the French can't do an agreement with the Brits. It needs to go via the European Commission. And you know what? Why this is not happening? Because Lord Frost is stopping these talks by going on about Article 16 in Northern Ireland. These civil servants who come here every week, they go to Brussels, go to London, spend so much money and time talking about Article 16 in Northern Ireland instead of really working on the basis of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement and sorting out these things, asylum, financial services, all that. But there is so much populism going on in this government. You're losing time and space to really do the things that you should do.
I don't even know where to start to unpack that. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the UK decided to leave the European Union, and you are very clear that you don't like that. You think it was a bad decision. There was a majority, a democratic majority in this country. And now, of course, we have a free trade deal with the European Union and we have some teething issues. And that is no surprise. That is often the case with any free trade deal with any country. But what you're doing is you are merging the fact of the arrangements on leaving the EU with the very long-standing issue, long before we left the EU, of the problem of people in small boats. That existed a long time.
No, but because of
I don't want to get sidetracked onto Brexit because that might come up later. Christine, final point on this from you. I know you've been very keen to make it.
Well, the argument that Andrea makes is easily settled, and that is by having safe legal routes that we don't have at the moment. And the problem is that the government has failed. The government has failed to solve the problem. And it keeps coming up with yet another suggestion that won't work. And what they need to do is get to grips with this and have proper safe legal routes and support asylum routes in the country and do
and Christine has... I don't know what's up with her connection.
Well, we do have safe legal routes, so into her silence, I shall just throw a fact.
We're going to move on. Sai in Widnes says, "Howdy, Iain. I don't have a question. I just want to say I love Cross Question. I enjoy it every night. It's great. We love people like you. So I hope you're watching on Global Player. It's 16 minutes past 8.
LBC.
Hey, Harry.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
90 minutes past 8 on LBC. Now, when we started Cross Question, I had the bright idea of keeping the camera and the mics on during the commercial breaks for people who are watching on Global Player. I've never managed to persuade them to do that, but in that last break, I really wish I had Shola and Andrea. Anyway,
It's
a healthy conversation.
You're having a spirited debate. We have with us Andrea Leadsom, Stefanie Bolzen from Die Welt, Shola Mos-Shogbamimu, and Christine Jardine, who's the Lib Dem Treasury spokeswoman. Or is it spokesperson? I always get that wrong. Right, let's go to our next question. It's our old friend James in Ayrshire. Hello, James.
Good evening, Iain. My question for the panel is Keir Starmer or Nicola Sturgeon or indeed Ed Davey had made the same sort of shambolic speech that Johnson made to the CBI this week, how would the British media have reacted?
How do you think they would have reacted?
I think they would have crucified them.
Don't you think they have crucified him?
I didn't.
Did you not hear me last night crucifying him?
In Sainsbury this morning, I looked at all the Tory papers and there was not one single mention of it in the front pages of any of them.
OK, Stefanie, answer the question. And also, how would the German media... Well, how did you cover it? How did you write about the CBI speech?
No, I didn't write about that, but I saw actually there was a lot of coverage in Germany about this. Asking me as a German who has been living with Angela Merkel for 16 years and comparing her to Boris Johnson is impossible. But last night, I must say... I admit, when I go to the Tory party conference, I enjoy the speeches. They are very good. They're very entertaining. Last night was the first time, or yesterday, when I listened to it again and I thought, this is just too much now. This is not funny anymore. This is not the dignity of the office of the Prime Minister. It was just embarrassing, and it's embarrassing for the country. And of course, it feeds in the opinion of those who say he's not up to the job. So I think for the party, and then the comments coming out this morning and the coverage in the British press was quite abysmal.
Let me play devil's advocate, which is my role in these situations. Everyone has an off day. Everyone, I'm sure, Andrea, you've lost your place in a speech once or twice and had to recover from it. Not everyone has, I suppose, talked about Pepper the Pig in a speech to the CBI. But, I mean, that is very... Boris, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of what people expect from him. Do you think that he's almost believing his own publicity now and that he can get away with this, or do you think it's more serious than that?
No, I think the difference was that usually he gets away with this because he's a genius when it comes to speaking in public, but he couldn't. He just got stuck several times, and it just was embarrassing. However you like him or not like him, it was just a real failure, and that was, I think, the quality difference to other occasions when also he can improvise. He's absolutely superior to anybody else to be on a stage. But in that moment yesterday, it was, and then of course it comes on top of everything else. So you have, as an outsider, you observe it and think every other day, every week, there's something else coming which is not good for this government, the Prime Minister.
Shola.
Yes. Okay, just to your point about it's not funny anymore. It was never funny. Okay, 2 years ago when he was running for election and people kept thinking, oh, how charming. He puts his hand in his hair. He looks disorganized. He sounds disorganized. That, every single thing that comes out of Boris Johnson's mouth is never substantive. So when he lost his place and he couldn't catch on the commitments or the key points he was meant to give these senior leadership, it's because he has nothing to say. He could not even commit it to his mind. And so losing your place is not the point. Having an off day, that's not the point. Boris Johnson has an off day every single day of his political life. This man should never have been in office.
Well, you may think he never should have been in office.
Yeah.
But 14 million people voted for him at the last election and gave him an 80-seat majority.
And that is my point.
That was a pretty good day for him.
The 14 million people, I absolutely, I saw that picture of him going, yay, right? Because of Brexit. But the point is, 14 million people cannot claim to be surprised or shocked that he's disorganized, he's incompetent, he's a liar. Because he was always that 2 years ago,
and
3 years ago.
For him.
That's my point. So I'm sitting here going, I'm sorry, everyone's acting like, oh, how disgraceful. But he was always like this. So why are we all acting like we're surprised? Why did you put him in there knowing what he's incapable of and what he's capable of?
Andrea Leadsom.
I mean, it's kind of almost not worth commenting because my colleagues here will tear me off a strip. But, the fact is, he was making a perfectly good point about British creativity, and he was having a very bad time with the flow of his speech. And he is a great communicator, and he can have big off days. I mean, we've heard over the years him say some things that he's lived to regret, and yesterday will no doubt become one of those days. But I absolutely don't agree with Shola that every time he says anything it's a disaster. That is simply not true. He is exactly, as you say, he is one of the world's great communicators.
Jesus, Lord,
he
please
can
no.
get,
He's not a great communicator.
Not to you,
We are
Shola.
having complaints about you blaspheming.
But that's not blasphemy. I'm a Christian.
And I'm finding
Lord.
it very offensive, you blaspheming as well.
I am not
I'm also
blaspheming, but I take the point. So I will not say. I will just say my point is I think it's an overstretch to call him one of the world's greatest communicators, because he's not.
Okay, so you don't agree. I'll accept the fact that you don't agree. I think he is a superb communicator. I also think he's an incredibly smart guy. And everybody knows, exactly as you say, Shola, he can be disorganised. He was clearly having an off day and lost his place in his speech. And it's not such a huge deal. I mean, he was making what was a very valid point about British creativity. He was saying that, statist approach would not come up with something as amazing as Peppa Pig, who looks like a giant pink hairdryer, which in fact he does. I mean, so many people, my kids included, love Peppa Pig. I quite like Peppa Pig. In fact, my husband can do a good impression of Daddy Pig's snort. Would you like me to do that now?
Yeah, if you wish to, yes.
No, that's fine. I think I've gone far enough down that.
Christine.
I am absolutely astonished.
There's a surprise.
It's astonishing. British business is crying out for clarity. They're crying out for leadership. They're crying out for a prime minister that can give them some vision of the way ahead. And what they got yesterday was a prime minister who couldn't complete his speech and ended up rambling on about a cartoon character that nobody could follow. If he was one of the great communicators, he could have stood there and if he'd lost his place, done it off the cuff. Great politicians, I'm sure Andrea's done that. She's lost her place in a speech and thought, you know what, I need to talk about this. And he couldn't do it. And what we have at the moment is that those 14 million people that Iain talked about voted for a government that promised them certain things. And they're not getting it. And one of the things they thought they were voting
to get Brexit done, for example.
One of the things that businesses voted for, Andrea, was support, clarity, to know where they were going. And they've got a prime minister who's not providing that right now. And a lot of people voted. A lot of people believed the promises about no tax hikes, who are now facing a tax hike. A lot of people are going to struggle through this winter because of the crisis in the cost of living and energy. And in the same way as they failed over the migration problem, they have totally failed. Your government has totally failed to fulfil its promises to the British people. And Boris's chaotic performance yesterday was a metaphor for the whole thing.
Andrea, how do you think he can get himself out of this? Because as Stefanie said, it's not just one speech. There have been lots of issues over the past few weeks that have afflicted the government. And to be fair, all governments go through squalls like this. But the key question is how they get themselves out of it and rebuild, I suppose, the trust with the public that may have been eroded over the past few weeks. And the Owen Paterson thing, one or two other things too. Do you think part of the problem is that, and you've sat in cabinet for many years, that in this particular cabinet, there aren't people who stand up to Boris Johnson. There aren't people who say, look, mate, you've gone too far on this. You need to row back, or this is what you need to do. It seems to me to be a very sort of rubber stamping cabinet.
I think, that's been the kind of the sense in the media that comments on the cabinet, but I actually don't think that that's the case. I mean, genuinely, the colleagues I've worked with in my intake, who I've worked with in cabinet, are very opinionated people. Priti Patel, for example, has very, very strong views. So does Dominic Raab.
We'll get Shola going again. You mentioned
I know. I don't want to mention her parents, however, because they wouldn't be allowed in this country.
No, don't go there. Don't go there.
Don't get me
according
started.
To Shola. No, I won't. You're going to prove that to me, aren't you, Shola. But no, I mean, genuinely, I think that it's been a bad few weeks. Completely agree, and of our own making, and that is awful for any government. However, there are great strides forward being taken. I mean, I'm hoping we're going to get on to social care, because I actually do think.
Funny enough, that is the next question.
Is that the next question? Good, because I do genuinely think that people will find that they will be in a significantly improved position. Now, quite often, when something first is put forward, there's all of the sort of negative, because inevitably, because of social media, you get a huge amount of campaigning and a load of, are you privatising the NHS? And then that dies down, because after the fact, people can see, no, of course not. You know, the NHS will always be free at the point of use, etc. Every party is committed to that. So there's a kind of like a rumour mill that sparks, and then there's a whole controversy, and then when it settles down, it's actually significantly improved. So I think that's competent government is
Can I just correct the point
that
it's not been a bad last few weeks, it's been a bad last 2 years since
Only
Boris,
2 years?
No, I'm just saying since
Not
Boris
11
Johnson,
years.
maybe more, absolutely, but we're talking about this current government. It hasn't just been the bad past few weeks. From December 2019, all through the mismanagement of the COVID pandemic and everything else, this government has been a mess of incompetence.
OK, we will come on to more of your questions in just a moment. 0345 6060 973. As you can tell, they're in a sparky mood tonight. It's 8:30. Zora Suleiman has the news headlines.
There are more changes to coronavirus guidance across the UK. Anyone in England or Scotland meeting a group of friends for dinner or going Christmas shopping are being encouraged to take a rapid lateral flow test first. 2 men have been arrested after the body of a teenager was found by officers searching for missing 18-year-old Bobby Ann McLeod. She was last seen on Saturday night as she left home to meet her friends in Plymouth Town Centre. And 2 Met police officers have been injured as they tried to detain a suspect in south-east London. Officers were called to reports of a man and woman being assaulted at an address in Beckenham just after 3:30 this afternoon. The suspect was tasered following a struggle during his arrest. LBC weather: rain moving southeastwards across Scotland and Northern Ireland through the night. Overcast elsewhere with patchy fog, a low of 5 degrees.
LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:34. I have no fear in saying that this is the sparkiest cross question for many episodes. We're often accused. People say we should rename this programme "Don't Get Very Cross Question," but I think tonight possibly not. Andrea Leadsom is here, former cabinet minister, Conservative MP for South Northamptonshire. Stefanie Bolzen is UK and Ireland correspondent for Die Welt, or is it editor? Are you editor or correspondent?
I don't really know what the difference would be.
Editor is sort of one step up.
Well, I could call myself an editor of a one-woman office. Then I'm an editor or bureau chief.
And Shola Mos-Shogbamimu is editor of everything, basically. And Christine Jardine is mistress of the Lib Dem Treasury team. I think that would be a good title for you, Christine. Right, let's go on to our next... Yeah, you like that? Let's go on to our next text question. It's from Luke in Cambridge. I should say you can text your questions in as well as call 84850. This is from Luke in Cambridge. How many castles are you allowed to own before you don't pay for social care anymore? I sense a tongue firmly in cheek there. Stefanie Bolzen, as well as answering that, tell us what the social care system is in Germany, and can we learn from it?
Well, first of all, let me say, and this especially to Andrea, this was one of the stories where I actually put praise on this government, because I thought it was very courageous to do this in the first place. And one of the things when I moved to Britain that I couldn't believe is that there isn't actually any social care in place. I mean, no system really. And then I understood that government after government, they shied away because, and they experience it now, it's going to be maybe the thing that this government will fall over, because it's so hard to do. In Germany, they introduced this in 1995, so many, many years ago, because, of course, Germany is much older. The demographics are even worse than in this country. And they introduced an insurance-based system. So every month from your, if you're, for example, employed, you get something like 4.5 or a bit more percent reduced. And this goes in a pot. And it's like a pension, but it's not your pension money. It's really only for old care money.
So it is hypothecated?
Yes, it stays there. And then...
what's the German for hypothecated?
Hypothecated... I'm not quite sure.
Well, I'm glad you don't know. My producer just said to me, you speak fluent German, you should know. Well, I don't.
It just sits there, right? So it's waiting for you, if you use it, of course. And I just went this summer, actually, my lovely auntie who died at 94, she... Just to explain how it works then. And then you can apply for different stages of social care. And then, for example, you get a cleaner, or you get someone in once a week who does your paperwork. You have someone who helps you to go to the doctor. And then when she got more and more ill, she would have a carer 3 times a day coming into her house, looking after her. And I saw her just before she died. And I remember stroking her face. And she had such soft skin. And she said, they're putting cream into my face 3 times a day now. And so it's something also about that dignifying of dying. Yeah. And that's what I find so shocking in this country, to imagine that old people end up in a ward, on a corridor, in a hospital, and dying in the most miserable, inhuman way. This needs to be really sorted. But I think this government has a massive challenge there, and I don't quite trust them, but Andrea, you will explain to me, does the money really go to the old or social care, or will it end up in the NHS?
So this is why I'm glad we're talking about this, because for me, I would support the German model. I've always thought we needed social care insurance, exactly that. So we introduced this way back, I can't remember when now, we introduced NEST, the compulsory pension, so that everybody has to save a bit for their old age pension. And actually, I think exactly that. If you pay into an insurance policy, we created something similar for flooding, for people who couldn't get insurance because their house had flooded before, and we created a sort of partly government-backed, partly privately funded insurance policy so that everyone could get flooding insurance. And it seems to me you could work on the same actuarial actuarial basis with social care, because something like 1 in 7 people need spending on their care as they get older over £100,000, 1 in 7 people. So that means you could assess that actuarially. And what this does, what I'm really pleased about this, is this creates a cap and a floor. Okay, so you have to, if you've got assets of over 100,000, then you have to pay for your care up to a maximum cap of £86,000. So each person has a cap of contributing to their own care at £86,000. And really importantly, really valuably, is that is also counts if you're having domiciliary care rather than care in a care home. And I mean, my stepdad at the moment, he has dementia and he's been in hospital and he's been stuck there. And so this is so personal to me. And of course, the issues are so fraught for everybody who's in that position. You know, I get so many constituents writing to me saying, we simply can't afford any more and there is no help. So people have to, at the moment, and have had forever, to literally, virtually bankrupt themselves before the state will pick it up. And then you end up in the position where somebody outlives their own budget and therefore the council wants to move them into a kind of a cheaper care home when they've got used to being in a care home. And of course, if you've been in a care home paying for yourself for 2 years, 3 years, that's become your home. And so, I mean, honestly, the current situation is so bad. This, I think, creating a cap and a floor is going to give the certainty that then will allow financial products to come out. And so you will in future, and there's a white paper discussing this, you will be able to buy an insurance product, a bit like a life insurance product that guarantees your 86 grand that you're going to have to pay.
The 2019 manifesto was very clear, and it said you won't have to sell your home.
Yes, and that's the plan, is that you won't have to sell.
That's not what Boris Johnson has said today, is it?
But what the plan is, that this white paper is going to be looking at the concept of, in effect, buying a product that enables you to borrow on the value of your home without having to sell your home. So, I mean, the point is that if your partner, if your spouse or your partner is still living in your home, people today have to sell the family home. Exactly. But in the future, they will not have to do that because
they don't now. If your spouse lives in the family home, you don't have to sell the home now.
No, but people are having to sell their home to pay for their care costs now.
Yeah, but not if their spouse lives in the home.
But my point is that in future, you will not have to sell the home at all because there will be, in the future,
that's not what Boris Johnson
financial products that enable you to borrow against the value of your home.
I think we all agree that the state of social care in this country is shameless. But what is equally shameless is the government claiming that it's fixed it. They promised, as Iain said, that nobody would have to sell your house. Now, Andrea is saying, you can take out an insurance policy and borrow against it, but you still lose the house. And £86,000 is a lot of money and will still mean people will have to give up their property and their money in order to be looked after in their old age. And that is simply not acceptable. And what Boris has done is he told us he had an oven-ready plan, which turned out to be half-baked. And now he's moving the goalposts to make it less generous for those who can least afford it by tinkering with the rules about councils. It breaks my heart to think that in this country we are not making the effort that we should. We heard what Stefanie said about Germany.
But what's your alternative?
That's your alternative? That's something we should be looking at. What we should be looking at is your proper national insurance, proper social care, beg your pardon. And what we shouldn't be doing, the other thing that has been pointed out already, is that we don't know how much of this national insurance hike is actually going to go to social care. Nobody's going to get anything until 2023. And the government has been asked repeatedly to make it clear what is actually going to social care, and they haven't. And what we want to do is have a proper look at it, have a proper examination of social care. We should be. Yeah, but we should be doing so
Christine.
much more.
We've had a proper examination of social care for the last 15 years, and nobody's come up with a solution apart from the one that the present government has come up with. Now, I am getting slightly tired of hearing opposition spokespeople. I mean, you are there to criticise the government, completely get that, and to hold them to account.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Liz Kendall earlier on, who's Labour's spokeswoman on this. Didn't seem to have any alternative plan at all. I haven't heard an alternative plan from you yet. Just criticising the government.
That's a fair point. I mean, we are here, as you said, to scrutinise and to make sure that the government listens to all arguments. I think what we need is a cross-party look at this. We need all to sit down and look at it properly.
Well, we had that in 2009, didn't we?
And we have the German model, which Stefanie has just been talking about. We have the German model. And yes, we did, in the coalition, we looked at this as well. We have the German model. We should look at how we implement something like that in this country.
Okay.
And we shouldn't be tinkering around the edges.
But Christine, that is what we're looking at.
All right,
that is the point
let's
of the
go to Shola. We haven't heard from Shola
done.
yet.
Okay, I think the reality here is that I find that the government is being utterly disingenuous. Do we need a social care plan? Heck yes. It's disgraceful. We've not had one to date. But how can we then come up with a plan that secures the only guarantee, I mean, to Andrea's point, the only guarantee and certainty here is that it creates a bigger divide between the haves and the have-nots, when we should actually try to balance things out. So at the end of the day, people with far less will end up losing the value of maybe their most prized assets, say their homes, compared to people who have greater values. That is not fair to me. Yes, we do need a social care plan. I would have probably thought, you know what, why not do it the other way around, so that those with less, when they reach a certain cap, they don't need to pay anything anymore. But no, we're not even looking at that. What we are doing is protecting those with plenty and helping them to be able to secure 90% or close to 90% of their asset value. That for me is not fair. That's the only guarantee and certainty I see here. I don't see an actual plan that will provide a fair and balanced social care for as many people as possible, because there are more people in this country that don't have than a few that do have.
Okay, I think we're going to move on there. Thank you very much indeed for your question, Luke in Cambridge. We'll come to more of your calls in just a second. It's 8:46.
LBC. Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7.
Double child rapist and murderer Colin Pitchfork, who now is back behind bars. Philip Musson was the uncle of Dawn Ashworth, second victim of Colin Pitchfork. It is suggested that there needs to be a review, that victims' families would get a bigger say over the potential release of criminals.
I've been full support of that, because at the moment it feels as though the agencies only advocate for the rights of the offender. I'm thinking about the memory and justice for Linda and Dawn, and the protection of the public.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC. The Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
I have the German word for hypothecate. Verpfänden.
Verpfänden, yeah. But
awkward word to pronounce.
In this context, what does it mean in the context of the insurance system?
Yeah.
What does that mean? The money stays in the pot? The money
stays in the pot. So it's like, at the moment, we all pay road tax, but that money is used for railways, not roads, basically. Mm-hmm. So that is not hypothecated.
No, it's hypothecated, of course.
Anyway, let's move on to our next question. It's from Tim in Southend on a text. There are 4 women on tonight's panel and 0 men. Why is this acceptable for women, but not the other way around? Well, I can easily defend that, because yesterday we had, including me, 4 men and 1 woman. Here we've got 4 women and 1 man, but apparently I don't count because I'm the host. Andrea?
I mean, I just like to revert to the fact that no men would exist without women. So, we have the right to have the occasional panel since...
Well, it's the other way around as well.
Since the world began.
Well,
no, I think, we've got freezers, thanks.
I suspect, Shola, this is something you can agree with Andrea on, isn't it?
Believe it or not, yeah.
Yay!
As far as I'm concerned, what the heck are you talking about? I mean, forever you've had all male panels. You did not complain. You have one night with 4 women and you're moaning about it? Come on, please give me a break. Let it just go and enjoy the conversation, however spirited it might be.
Christine?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Andrea on this, which might be a bit of a shock. But, I mean,
yes.
It's
going well.
Where is the problem, really? The good thing about it is that it points up how many more women there are in broadcasting, in politics, in business, and that's a good thing. If you had an all-male panel tomorrow night, I would still listen. I would miss the interaction, and I think it's important that we have a wide variety and diversity in this country, and we reflect that in always, not just gender, but ethnicity, ability, disabilities, all sorts of things we should be reflecting.
Well, of course, I might be replaced soon by a new presenter on LBC, Andrea Marr, possibly. You never know.
Oh.
Stephanie?
I just find this the question is such interesting. I would like to ask Tim, why does he ask that question? Does he feel threatened?
It's a text, you can't.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, why is that a question at all?
Yeah.
There's something simmering that men feel insecure that their position in society is threatened if more women are in public.
He has got a point, though, because I think if we did have a panel of 4 men and I was the host of the panel, so 5 men, no women in the studio, that would be unusual. And in fact, I can't remember. I think that has happened once on the show. And we have had all women panels many more times than once. And I know that I would get a lot of abuse if we had
I would have pointed out an issue with that, because as far as I'm concerned, you need to be more progressive, and having an all-women panel is part of your progression. That does not mean we're excluding men, and because I know for a fact you don't exclude men, right? They're all over the place. But we don't give women enough platforms. And yes, you do platform
actually,
women.
Are we even allowed to use that term now? Should I say we have a panel full of cervixes, for example?
What the heck are you on about now?
Talking of which, let's move on to James in Watford, who has a question along those lines. Hello, James.
Good evening. Should teachers celebrate or challenge wokeness?
Oh, I love questions like this. Shola, I know you're very keen to answer this question, judging by you holding your head in your hands. This is why people should watch rather than just listen.
Okay,
you're a very visual person, aren't you?
I am. The thing with me is that my entire body is an expression in itself. Should teachers celebrate or challenge wokeness? Can I just ask James if he knows what the heck being woke means? Do you understand what being woke is? Do you understand the rationale in understanding that it is important for us to be awakened to racial injustice, racial inequality that exists in our society, and all of the nuances and complexities that comes with that? I would have thought that's a good thing. But of course, people today have changed the word woke to mean something else. To mean, oh, well, that means you're affecting my freedom of speech. Don't get me into my character speech. speaking. The point is this: teachers ought to be teaching, and celebration and challenge for me is about engaging in real discourse that talks about real issues of the day. So when you say teachers, I don't think it's just teachers. I think everybody should be having a conversation about real issues that affect us. And if that makes me woke, then woke I am. But if wokeness means the whole far right narrative around, or people are trying to steal your right to be this or that, that's not what wokeness is about. So I would say, first of all, get educated on what woke means.
Stefanie, what does woke mean in German? Aufgewacht. Is that right?
Wokeness means pretty much the same as it means here. It's overly politically correct. But I think teachers should celebrate and challenge both. I mean, they should do both things. What they shouldn't do, or what they should not let students do or young people do, is to say we can only accept one opinion. So what is happening increasingly in universities. So universities are places where open discussion should be endorsed and not close people out. That's something that I observe, and maybe I have teenage daughters at home, and I sometimes find they're almost aggression and upset about certain things scary and intolerant in their own way.
So you want to be intolerant of their intolerance?
Yeah.
Christine?
Well, woke actually is, the dictionary definition is that you are, as Shona I think said, awake to injustice and racism. And I think the more woke we become, the better it will be for all of us. Is that for teachers to celebrate or challenge? I don't know. I don't think that if I was a teacher, I would like to be tasked with either of them. I think their job is to encourage children in their learning, and to be adventurous about reading, about learning about the world, about all aspects of it. But I don't really think that we should be asking them to challenge or celebrate it. But I don't like the fact that woke, for a lot of people, has become a pejorative term. It is about being alert to injustice and racism in all their forms. Okay. And that's what we should focus on.
Andrea?
Okay, so scarily, I'm agreeing with Shola and Christine again.
Yeah, that's excellent.
So
I feel I brought you all together.
Yeah, you have. Well done.
At the end.
I think Shola's exactly right to say you need to ask what woke means, because actually the dictionary definition, as Christine points out, is that you should actually be open-minded and egalitarian, and it is the opposite of the kind of small-mindedness that we all dislike. And so you do have to understand what woke means. So I also have kids who are teenagers and slightly older, and we have arguments about this, because for the older who are at university, they find woke is a bad thing because it means deplatforming people and cancelling people, because you're not allowed to have that opinion or to express that view. Whereas for my daughter, who's a teenager, it's a much more open and inclusive definition. So I think the definition is important. I think it certainly shouldn't be used as an insult. I think it has been abused as a term. But actually, to the point which I think your caller was asking about, should teachers be celebrating or resisting, I think the job of teachers is actually to help children to look at things from every end of the telescope, and to understand all the amazing variety that we have in our country and in our world, and to form their own views. And that, I think, is the opposite of, unfortunately, what happens in a lot of schools, which is where teachers impose their own views on children.
James, quickly from you, your own reply to your own question.
I can't disagree with anything I've heard there, really. The only thing I'd add is that, taken to its extreme, I think any belief system can be a problem. But more reading, more discussion, and more awareness of what the definition means, that all sounds good.
OK, thank you very much indeed, James. Final text question from Juliet in Bromley. This is going to challenge you all. Boris Johnson loves Peppa Pig World. What's your favourite theme park or fairground ride? Christine, let's come to you first.
Oh, that's unfair. It was Animal Kingdom at Walt Disney World in Florida, but then I went to Harry Potter World in London, and I think it's probably the winner now.
Andrea?
So I think the most fun was at this place called Gulliver's World near Milton Keynes when my kids were little, and it was like mini fun fairs, and I just felt so brave because I was just fine on the roller coaster and the thing that drops you from a great height because they were all mini. So that one.
Okay, Stefanie?
I just love water slides, whatever height, however long, the steeper the better, water slides, whatever.
Shola?
Epcot, Disney World, Florida as well. I've been able to graduate slowly from Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom from when my kids were really little. And finally, I'm like, oh, good, there's a place in Disney World where I can actually do more adulty stuff. But yeah, that I think definitely.
Wicksteed Park in Kettering, does that still exist, Andrea?
I do believe it does.
I used to go there as a child. Used to love that. It's a water slide there.
Oh,
so you want to check it out, Stefanie?
Right.
Thank you very much for a very spirited edition of. I shouldn't say feisty. Jackie Smith always has a go at me when I say feisty because she says you'd never use that word about a man. Christine, thank you very much. Andrea, Stefanie, and Shola. I am going off to wrap a cold towel around my head for a couple of minutes before we get on to our next subject. We're going to talk about the fact the NHS is now going to give therapy before medication to treat depression. I want to get your experiences. 9:01.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, Devon and Cornwall police have just held a press conference after the body of a teenager was found by officers searching for missing 18-year-old Bobby Ann McLeod. She was last seen on Saturday night as she left home to meet her friends in Plymouth Town Centre.